Today I'm going to show you how to wash your Twotuckgom bears. So over the weekend I had my nieces with me and they really love my Twotuckgom collection, and my youngest niece, who is 2 years old, pulled all of them out and started playing with them, and they got really dirty. They were put on the floor around the dogs, and then also she got a hold of a crown and actually colored on one of my Twotuckgom and left a crown mark on his head. So I had to give them a bath after my nieces left, so that way they could get clean again. And it's kind of a day-long process. The washing part doesn't take very long, but unfortunately the drying process can take a while. So the first thing that I did was I got my bathtub set up. I got a little water catcher so I can really fill my tub fuller, but I turned on the water to a lukewarm temperature, not too hot, not too cold, and I let the bathtub fill up. Next, I go ahead and I pour in just a little bit of laundry detergent. I use Arm & Hammer's Sensitive Skin detergent, liquid detergent, and I put less than 1/4 of a capful. You really don't need that much detergent to put in when washing your goms. Also, it's important to note too that this is a mild laundry detergent, which is important when washing your goms. You want a mild detergent. It's time to add the goms. So I have two keychain Twotuckgoms, a little stress ball, which is the first time I've ever had to wash the stress ball. I was a little unsure about it, but I went ahead and did it, and it turned out okay. I have my costume Twotuckgom, and then my original Twotuckgom, and this is the one that my niece actually colored on. There is an orange crown mark. You can't really see it very well on the camera, but there's an orange crown mark where she colored on him, and it stayed. It wouldn't come off when I was just trying to wipe it off the first time. So he gets a bath. So now that my water's full, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, and I take just a washcloth or a rag and just get it wet in some of the detergent and just really wipe things down really good. Give them a nice scrub. You don't have to be rough with it. I was actually pretty gentle. And the fun thing about washing your goms is they all float in the water. And when I washed my Twotuckgom for the very first time, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and he floated. So that was kind of a fun little surprise. So moving on to the keychain gom and scrubbing him down really good. Now the one thing with the costume goms that I like to make sure is I like to make sure that I get inside the costume head, where the costume wraps around the head of the gom. Dirt, dust, food particles, if you have a kid playing with it, can get in there. So you want to make sure that all of that gets cleaned out as well. So basically after this, I just went through and I just wiped down and scrubbed down each gom individually with the washcloth. Again, not too hard, not too soft, making sure each gom gets cleaned. So moving on to the original Twotuckgom, and here I am scrubbing the crown off of him with the washcloth. I had to get a little bit more elbow grease than normal, but it didn't do any harm to it. In fact, the crown came off pretty quickly, which was nice. So it's nice to know that they are durable, washable, safe for kids, although I don't recommend crown on a regular basis. So moving on to the costume gom. Now this was actually the first time I had ever washed the costume Twotuckgom before. He's never really needed a bath before this day. And so I just went through same thing and made sure that he got scrubbed down from head to toe, inside and out. Just to make sure that he would, not be dirty anymore. Get all the dirt out of it, and any germs too. With coronavirus, having guests over is really important to make sure that all your items get cleaned and sanitized. The costume Nunu Gom is a little bit different material and texture from the original Nunu Gom, but he is 100% polyester, completely washable. I believe he is microfiber as well. And again, just like the keychain, make sure that you go in, you want to wash the face really good, and make sure that you go in and get the little rim edge where the costume meets the head, just to make sure that any dirt and particles don't get stuck in there. Once your gom or goms are all washed, it is time to rinse them out. So again, I used the same temperature of water that I did when I filled the tub, and I just run the water over the gom, scrub it, make sure the detergent gets washed off the outer fabric, a little bit of the inner fabric as well, from head to toe, making sure that he gets done. Your gom is going to fill with water. It is not a light thing to hold. He becomes pretty heavy, and he's loaded with water. Here I am actually holding him and gently squeezing, and not really squeezing, but just applying some pressure to drain the water out, because he does hold a lot of water in both his body and his head. This is probably the longest portion, aside from drying. The longest portion that it's going to take is just to carefully drain the excess water out. And you have to be careful, because if you really squeeze your gom, you can mess up the shape of the stuffing inside, and it can become disformed. So you want to make sure that you're not really squeezing your gom too hard. I am actually at this point just holding and applying very light pressure, and all of the water is actually running out from his head and his feet. It takes a while to get it out, but the end result is that my gom is not misformed, and he dries very well. So after making sure as much water is drained out of my gom as possible, I went ahead and checked to make sure that the crown mark that my niece had left on him had in fact been cleaned off, and it had, which was good. So after double checking to make sure all the water is out, I go ahead and take the gom, moving him from the bathroom to the area that I have laid out so that he can air dry. If you're like me and washing multiple goms at once, it just becomes a process of wash, rinse, repeat. And so at this point, I'm on the rinse and repeat stage. Rinse, repeat for each one. Obviously, the smaller goms are easier to rinse and drain out. They actually don't retain as much water as the bigger ones did. There's not as much stuffing in places for the water to hold. Even though there's a lot of stuffing in there, really it came out, most of the water came out pretty quickly, and so they dried faster than the others, which is to be expected. If you're washing your stress ball, you can actually squeeze your gom a little bit more, because the stress ball is designed to squeeze. However, be cautious of the head, because the head is a separate material from the body itself. So you want to make sure you don't misshape the head. And I thought I did there for a moment, so I was trying to reshape the fluff that's in there. It's not much, but it's enough that it could become a little disformed. But the back end of the body, go ahead and squeeze away, because that's what they're meant for. The final step is hanging up or laying flat your goms and letting them air dry. The big ones take about 12 to 14 hours to dry. I turn them over from time to time to make sure they got dried on all sides. The little ones took about 4 hours at most. Do not put your goms in the dryer. This can mess up the material and fabric, as well as the internal fluffing, and cause shaping problems with your goms. Let them air dry. You can hang dry them or lay them flat. I prefer to lay mine flat. I put a big fan in front of mine this time around, and every hour and a half to 2 hours, I would flip the goms over to let them dry on one side and then the other. And eventually I took the wet towel out of the way, and they finished drying on their own. Another suggestion is to occasionally brush your goms fur to make sure that it lays down in the direction you want it to when it dries. And with that, my goms are clean, dry, and in as good a shape as when I first got them. I hope that this tutorial helps you to keep your goms clean. Twotuckgom released an instructional image, but no one has ever really filmed a tutorial. So hopefully this will help others with their maintenance goals. Thank you very much and have a great day.